Yo, what's up guys? It's Jack and welcome back to another video. And in this one, I wanted to talk about the lessons that every single iteration of Call of Duty has taught us over the years. And I'm not talking about necessarily about things like that we need to do to get better at a certain Call of Duty and the things that we need to change in terms of our playstyle or whatnot. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about specifically the things that every single iteration of Call of Duty has taught us about what we like about the game and what we don't like. And to be fair, we can't just make this, for instance, a Call of Duty World War II diss video or a Call of Duty Ghosts diss video or something like that simply because there are certain things about the game that we don't like. And as a matter of fact, even when it comes to the worst Call of Duties, there are things that they implemented in the game, whether it was the most basic thing or whether it was something that was completely different that ended up being a success. But as we've learned and as time has gone on, we've learned that what makes a good Call of Duty, what makes a Call of Duty a success is that it gets more right than it does wrong. So without further ado, there's a lot to talk about in this video, so let's get started. And I'm going to start with my favorite Call of Duty, Black Ops 2, and work my way up to today, which is Call of Duty World War II. So what did Black Ops 2 teach us? Well, Black Ops 2 taught us that, well, now, Call of Duty Black Ops 2 is my favorite Call of Duty, in case you guys didn't know, right? Okay, so that game, in case you didn't know, was one of the biggest violators, if not the biggest violator of the whole lag compensation and rubber banding thing that's going on in Call of Duty. The lag comp in Black Ops 2 was absolutely terrible, especially at launch, and especially now. Like, if you were to play the game right now and you want to experience bad lag comp or whatnot, play this game anywhere from midnight through, like, let's say 5, 6, 7 in the morning, where the population during that time of day is really low, and on top of that, you got a lot of tryhards playing at that time. But even during its prime, I mean, the game still had a lot of issues when it comes to rubber banding and lag compensation. And Drifter made a video way back in the day about exactly how bad it was in this game. And I think there's only one other Call of Duty that came close to it, and I don't remember which one it was. But Black Ops 2, as good as that game was, it was the biggest violator of the whole connection and lag comp issue, unfortunately. But it got everything else so right, and it improved upon the previous iteration so much that people, after a while, after they released a patch, sometime after its release, after about a month or so, I think they released a patch, if not sooner than that, and the game ended up playing a lot better, but it still is one of the biggest violators. But it just goes to show you that sometimes even a bad connection in a game can kind of be almost bypassed because everything else is just so good and just so fun, which is pretty crazy. And that brings us into Call of Duty Ghosts. Call of Duty Ghosts had an amazing connection. Like, with my personal experience, the hit detection in that game was really, really solid. And the connections were really, really solid. And it seemed like no matter what game mode you would play, whether it had more of a population on it or less, you would find a game that you'd be connected to a game and the hit detection would be pretty good. Obviously, you know, since this is Call of Duty after all, I mean, obviously, and just like every game, there are going to be some exceptions here and there. You will run into a few games where the connection absolutely sucks. But for the most part, in terms of consistency, Call of Duty Ghosts was, it just goes to, it's shocking of how good the connection was and the hit detection in that game. But it got everything else, like it missed the target on a lot of other aspects of the game to where that game ended up being, in a lot of eyes of the community, and ended up being a failure. Now, granted, there's a lot of people as well that absolutely love that game, and I can definitely see why, and in certain instances, I do too, as well. I mean, they also came out with Cranked. I mean, Cranked was amazing, right? But a lot of people didn't play it after a while because the games were over way too quick, and also because the game itself was designed that it was designed in a way that it rewarded a much more passive play style because of the fact that the maps, for the most part, were really big, and every single game, because the time to kill was so low. I mean, people died really, really quicker than usual in any other Call of Duty. It felt like you were playing hardcore a lot. So these two aspects focused it kind of made the community play a lot more passive. And to top it all off, they didn't really do too much of innovation and league play or rank play or whatnot, the competitive aspects seemed to be a complete failure, especially after Black Ops 2. So much love that Black Ops 2 did. It seemed like Infinity Ward just ignored that completely with Ghosts. I mean, it goes on and on. So, I mean, when it comes to the overall lesson in this game, it's the opposite of Black Ops 2, and that is, well, even though connection was really good, you still have to have everything else, you know, at least be a pass in order for the game to be enjoyable. So, if the game itself is not enjoyable, even if the connection is really good, it's still not going to be successful. So that's what Call of Duty Ghosts taught us. Moving on, Advanced Warfare. Advanced Warfare taught us that we do not like advanced movement, especially after the first month or so. At first, we were hyped all about it. It was like, yeah, everybody's going to rush everywhere, and it's going to be absolutely amazing, and everybody's going to be moving around. It's going to be so much more fun to play. Campers are doomed and all that. And the next thing you know, within a month or so, a lot of people realized that they didn't like that. And a lot of the reason is simply because of the fact that, well, the advanced movement in Advanced Warfare didn't make it feel like Call of Duty. Granted, it had Call of Duty in the title. Granted, it said Call of Duty. But with that being said, it didn't feel like Call of Duty because the advanced movement was so... How do I put this? It was so different and so drastic, and it felt like a completely different game when it came down to the gameplay. And that's why a lot of fans actually backed up from it. And I've mentioned in previous videos that a lot of people that are friends of the friends on my friends list, they've mentioned that they didn't even give Advanced Warfare a shot simply because of the fact that it just didn't feel like Call of Duty to them. And that is what Advanced Warfare taught us. You can't really stray too far away from the basic Call of Duty formula. And we're not necessarily talking about advanced movement. We're talking about exactly how the advanced movement works and how it's implemented into the game. And there are more things that were wrong with the game, but pretty much that was the big lesson that Advanced Warfare taught us, is the fact that advanced movement, although it's pretty cool, and even though it sounds good on paper, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to make the game a success, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it fits in well with Call of Duty. And let's move on to Black Ops 3. Black Ops 3 taught us that you can implement advanced movement in a Call of Duty as long as it's done in a certain way that doesn't eliminate the basic formula, which is the boots on the ground gameplay. And Call of Duty Black Ops 3, you could play boots on the ground if you want to with barely using any jetpacks or whatever you want to call them in Black Ops 3, and you can still succeed. You could still implement everything you know about the Call of Duty gameplay element and implement it in Black Ops 3 and be successful and play that game like a normal Call of Duty as if it was boots on the ground. And it wouldn't make the biggest difference of whether or not you use jetpacks in that game. Granted, you did it correctly, and granted the way that you played and the way you support your own playstyle and the way you adjust according to which game, because every single Call of Duty game that gets released, there's something that you have to adjust to every year, no matter what, whether it's a boots on the ground game or whether it's an advanced movement game or whatever it is. It doesn't really matter. You have to, there's always something new to learn, because not every Call of Duty is going to feel the same, and it's not going to play the same either, not necessarily. And that brings us to Infinite Warfare. And the big reason why Infinite Warfare got so much hate was because, not only just because it was a reskin of Black Ops 3 in terms of the movement and the gameplay and everything, and they didn't really innovate or anything like that. It was just Black Ops 3 version 2 or whatever, or just, you know, an alternate version of Black Ops 3, right? And it wasn't just because of that and the fact that we already played Black Ops 3 for a year previously. It's also the fact that the community was so ready to go back to boots on the ground, and they didn't do that, and a lot of fans ended up getting really upset with that, and Infinity Ward ended up getting the short end of the stick once again. And at the same time, they knew that they needed to go back to boots on the ground, but for whatever reason they didn't do it. They wanted to play it safer. I don't know exactly why, but the thing is, they just basically copied and they copied and paste Black Ops 3, and they called it Infinite Warfare, and they gave it a different paint job, and voila, there you go. So and they attached Modern Warfare Remastered to it for another $20. So they knew that a boots on the ground game was something that was definitely something that they needed to go back to, which is one of the reasons why they remastered Call of Duty 4. So that's basically what Infinite Warfare taught us. I mean, you can't copy and paste a game and expect to succeed, because we've already done that. We want the next game to be a little something different. Now, granted, like I said, every single Call of Duty feels different, but this was one of the few exceptions. It didn't feel that much different than Black Ops 3 in terms of the way the advanced movement worked. And it just seemed like a different version of Black Ops 3, and that was it, really. So playing it safe isn't necessarily the way to go. All right, now let's move on to today, and that is Call of Duty World War II. Now, what did Call of Duty World War II teach us, or and what I've learned from it personally is that, and I've known this, but it just goes to show that, like, I mean, that I wasn't wrong in my personal opinion and from what I've seen, and that is boots on the ground isn't everything. Boots on the ground isn't the end-all be-all aspect to a good Call of Duty game. You gotta have kill streaks or score streaks that work. You gotta have create a class system that is very flexible while balanced at the same time. You gotta have maps that are flowy and balanced. I mean, these are all the things that kind of mold together to make a good Call of Duty game. And if you want your Call of Duty game to be a success, in my opinion, you have to get more things right than things that are wrong. But I will give Sledgehammer one thing. I will give Sledgehammer some credit, and that is that they're ballsy. They went for something completely different in Advanced Warfare, and again, they went something for completely different in World War II, while going back to boots on the ground, but yet trying to change the game enough to where it's something different. But and like I said, in my opinion, the changes weren't the right changes, but that's just my opinion, and other people enjoy the game, and that's great for them. But these are the things that the previous Call of Duty iterations have taught me, and as well as taught the community, I believe, as well, at least to a certain extent. And I want to know down in the comment section, what did every Call of Duty iteration teach you? And that's all I got for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed the gameplay and the commentary, and as always, if you enjoyed the video, let me know, and if you didn't, let me know what I can do to make my videos better, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.